Good morning. You're listening to Morning Coffee with Kevin. I'm your host, Kevin Peterson. So, welcome to the show, everybody. Good morning. I hope you're all enjoying a fresh cup of coffee and having a good start to your day. As for me, I am doing exactly that. I am having my first cup of coffee. I'm enjoying my day so far. Things are going good. It's a little rainy outside, and I'm just staying in where it's warm and putting this podcast together. So I kind of want to give everybody some insight to what this podcast is going to be about. I only laugh because, you have to be able to laugh at yourself. For those of you who have followed me from my very first podcast, then you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who are hearing the show for the very first time, there's been a lot of learning curves. And so I kind of just want to introduce myself, and I want to just let everybody know what I'm about and what this podcast is going to bring on a weekly level, because we'll be posting the podcast once a week for now, and at some point we may try to put the show up every day. I'm not going to make any promises. I don't really know where that's going to go. As for now, we're going to do it once a week. So I've worked in the music industry for the last 47 years. An awful long time. And at the same time I was doing that, running my own business, running a record company, running a recording studio, and now I've even added a film production company. So with all of that going on, I still worked a 40-hour-a-week job for the state that I live in. And I just recently retired from that job after 34 years of being employed with the state. I am now entering into retirement, and I am enjoying my retirement. I am having a blast. I'm doing fun stuff that I didn't normally have time to do. And this is just so much fun. It's like a kid going to Disneyland. I can sleep in when I want. I can pretty much, go where I want, do what I want, do the things that I enjoy doing, which I was never able to do before. So, I spent all these years working for the state. I spent all these years working in the music industry. And while I've been in the music industry, I have held pretty much every position in this industry you can imagine. And the only part of the industry that I never really got involved in was broadcasting. Broadcasting was never my thing. I just kind of stayed away from it. I knew people in broadcasting, but I was not a broadcaster. So obviously, I really never had any experience with podcasting. And this is not my first podcast. I've had multiple podcasts, all of which, for one reason or another, and it pains me to say this, and it's a tough pill to swallow, but all of my previous podcasts have failed. And they failed ultimately because I did not take care of them the way I should have, and I did not bring to the table what I said I was going to. And my last podcast was very short-lived, and it's really due to the amount of pressure that I end up putting on myself. And what I have found is that I need to stop doing that. I need to not set a standard for my listeners to expect, because this podcast is not going to be your traditional podcast. this podcast is strictly going to be the most unorthodox podcast you have ever listened to. The topics on this show are going to be random. They're going to be whatever I feel like talking about today, whatever I feel like is just on my mind. And I've got to tell you, there will be a lot of shows, there will be a lot of topics that pertain to the music industry because that's what I know. There will be a lot of podcasts that are going to be about the film industry because I'm still involved in this industry. But I want to talk about fun stuff. I want to talk about do-it-yourself projects. I want to talk about brewing beer. I know, brewing beer has nothing to do with the music industry, right? That's what I'm saying. This podcast is going to be very unorthodox. We're going to have many, many, many topics on this show. I'm an avid brewer. I've been brewing beer, making wine for the last 30 years. 35 years. So I've been doing this an awful long time. I also have a real interest in art. I create art. I'm a painter. And so I will be bringing up that topic on the show. And really, this show is going to be pretty wide open. And, you know, it's going to be just a place for me to just speak to you. And hopefully you enjoy what I have to say, and hopefully you enjoy my company, and you want to be a part of my life for a half hour, 45 minutes a week. And, you know, like I said, we may end up doing the show more often. I may decide at some point that I don't even want to do the show once a week. And see, there I kind of go again saying, well, we're going to do the show once a week. Well, we're planning on doing the show once a week. Let's put it that way. We're planning on doing the show once a week. If I don't have time, I'm not going to do it. It's as simple as that. I am not setting a standard or a format to follow. I am only putting this podcast out for my friends, for my family, and for the people who have been involved, all the beautiful people who've been involved with Manila Dawn Records, Manila Dawn Films, and Manila Dawn Studios, and Electric Llama Films, because that's really what's important. And those are the people that I want to talk to. Don't get me wrong, I want to talk to the whole world. I hope at some point people are listening to this podcast and just listening to me ramble on and enjoy it. And if you don't, you know, that's fine. I totally get it. I hope at some point that I've got listeners all over the world. At one point, I did have listeners in, I believe it was 7 countries. Pretty good, huh? I had listeners in 7 countries, and I never, ever thought that original podcast would ever reach anybody outside of the general area where I live. I honestly did not see that coming, but I did. I had listeners in 7 countries, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So, you know, I don't anticipate that kind of following again. It would be nice, but I'm not gonna hold my breath. So anyways, I'm sitting down this morning. I look outside, it's pouring rain. And I thought, you know, I think I'm going to go ahead and do the first episode, basically the pilot episode of Morning Coffee with Kevin, and just kind of see how it goes. It's been a while now since I've been in front of the mic, and I've probably gotten a little rusty. So, you know, really what I'm doing now is I'm working on finishing up my single. And for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time and may not be aware, I do have my own band, and we're called the Kevin Peterson Band. Sometime this year we have an album coming out. I say sometime this year because, you know, deadlines are meant to not follow, I guess. I don't know. It just seems like we can never get anything out when we say we're going to get it out. But anyways, we've got an album coming out this year. It's called Back to the Land. And it's going to be a great record. It's an acoustic album. It's really kind of getting back to my roots and just enjoying making a very simple record and not overproducing it too much. There's just too much of that in the industry now anyway. Everything is so overproduced. I wanted to create just a wonderful acoustic record that people could relate to and enjoy, and that's what we've done. So anyways, we have our single, which will be coming out in May, I believe May 13th. That'll be available worldwide, pretty much on all platforms. And at that same time on our YouTube channel, which there is a link in the description of the podcast, there is a link to our YouTube channel. If you go to the Manila Dawn Records YouTube channel, there will be, at the same time, May 13th, when the single is available, the video for the single will be available on our YouTube channel. So I've been working on that. I've got a couple other projects going on in the studio that I've been working on, and I'm just staying busy, and that's really what I've been up to. And I get a lot of comments from people. Well, you haven't called, you haven't come by. Where'd you go? You just disappeared. Well, I'm retired, but I'm not retired because I stay extremely busy. And, I have a son to take care of, so, he requires a lot of attention too. So that's kind of where I'm at with things, people. And I like talking to people. I enjoy letting people know about my creativity, what I'm up to. I just like to talk to people. I'm a very much a people person. I honestly think that my other podcast really did not do well due to my personality. And I admit that. I just am not a radio host. I like to talk to the public. I like to do my podcast. But I'm not a radio personality. That's just not me. I'm not that person. I'm the guy who sits behind the mixing board, turning all the little knobs, pushing all the faders, making the little lights flash, and magically making the band sound great. That's what I do. And really the only time I talk is when somebody walks up to the equipment and starts messing with it. Drives me crazy. Everybody thinks they know what they're doing, and that's not the case. So I'm going to be doing some interviews on the show with some local bands. I've got one interview lined up right now. I don't know when that's going to take place, but it will be coming up in a episode, down the road a ways. And that's with a jazz musician by the name of Raymond Pitts. And, it's kind of a funny situation because I've tried to have Raymond on the show multiple times on multiple different podcasts, and it just never happened. Well, the guy calls me up the other day and he says, "Hey, guess what? I'm retiring." And I went, "Oh, really? You're going to be like me? You're going to retire?" He says, "Yeah, I'm retiring." And I said, "Okay, great." I said, "Well, now you have no excuse not to be on the podcast." He just laughed. He says, "Sure, I'll be on the podcast. That sounds like it'd be fun." So we're going to work on that interview. We're going to get that available, and we're just going to kind of freeform our show. Nothing's really written down. I just want to come to you once a week, maybe more often, I don't know, and just kind of let my listeners know what I'm up to. What's going on in the world of Kevin what's going on, at your recording studio, what's going on with your record company, what's going on with the film production companies, what's going on. Well, that's why I'm here, and I'm going to let you know what's going on, and and that's it, folks. I'm just tired of trying to do what I would call a professional podcast, because I'm not a professional podcaster. I'm not a radio personality that, people are just going to flock to and go, oh, we got to listen to this guy, I hope people enjoy the show. I hope people enjoy the content, and I hope people want to tune in. And, I think this show is going to be pretty wide open as far as subject and what we're doing and how we're going to do it. So I may even, at some point, put up reruns of some of the older podcasts. Just one episode every now and then. I'm not going to be rerunning like entire seasons or anything like that. If I was ever to do anything like that, that would probably be like maybe at Christmas time or Thanksgiving, when I'm really, really busy with family and I don't have time to put out another show. And this way you would still have content to listen to. And, my record company right now is also working on an archive and a reissue project for one of the bands that I used to work with, that I used to be a part of. And once those recordings become ready, I'm going to be posting those here too. So there's really going to be a lot of different stuff going on with this podcast, and you're pretty much not going to be able to predict what next week or the next podcast is going to be about, because like I said, every week it's going to be different. I'm possibly even thinking about doing some informational training for people that may be interested in learning the process of brewing your own beer or making your own wine. And during the process, while I'm going through the process of putting the ingredients together, doing the fermentation, doing the transfer to the secondary fermenter, bottling, carbonation, kegging, whatever I'm doing, I may, put up some podcast where I walk people through the process when I'm doing it myself in my little brewery. So, like I said, this podcast is really going to be all over the place. It's going to be about music. It's going to be about film. It's going to be about art. It's going to be about coffee. It's going to be about brewing beer, making wine. I may even have some tips on how to tweak your computer to make it run better. I mean, it's pretty much just wide open, folks. So if you feel like you need to bail right now and just run and never tune in again, go right ahead. I probably wouldn't blame you. And for those of you who are willing to hang around and put up with my bullshit, then I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate you listening, and I hope you're going to be back for our first episode. This is just a pilot show, and I'm not really considering this the first episode. This is a pilot just to kind of see what kind of hits I get, see if anybody, is going to subscribe, see if anybody's going to listen, see if anybody's going to download. It's really going to be kind of interesting, and I kind of think that that's another reason why I'm not taking this too seriously anymore. And that's because this podcast, it takes a lot of my time and a lot of effort to put this show together and to put it out there for you to listen to. And I don't think the average person really understands just how much time and effort goes into recording the podcast, editing the podcast, mixing the podcast, and then mastering it so that it's available, it can go out and be available to the public. It's a lot of work. And, it's just not something that I want to spend my spare time doing. I've got other things that are more important in my life at this point in my life. I'm not a young man anymore, and I enjoy spending time with my friends, my family, especially my son. My son comes first before anything else in this world. My boy comes first. And, that's it, folks. So I hope I haven't bored you to death. I hope you tune back in. I hope you listen. I promise to have some local musicians on the show do some interviews, possibly even we might possibly even do some in-house performances. That might be a little tricky, but I'm going to try to put that together. I'm going to try to make that happen. We'll see. And in the meantime, I wish everybody a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I look forward to being here in my podcast studio talking to you at least once a week, just to let you know what's going on. And at some point, I may even be willing to set the podcast up to where I can take callers and have people call in and let me know how their day's going. We can actually talk. Maybe somebody's got a question about brewing beer. Maybe somebody's got a question about, how to mix a song or something, or about a piece of gear in the studio or whatever. I mean, I'm always down to talk to people, and I'm just a friendly guy. And that's kind of why I like doing this show, even though I'm here in my studio by myself, putting this together. I just like to have that connection with the outside world this way. And it's amazing that, modern technology has brought us to this point to where we can share a little bit of our own lives with other people through a podcast or through a video cast or little short films that we, put up on YouTube and, just any other YouTube content. And it's just so amazing what we can do in the world today. And just be grateful, people, for what we have, and don't be greedy. I run into a lot of people that are just so greedy, and it just blows my mind. With everything we have available to us in our world today, if you've got food on the table, if you've got a roof over your head, if you've got access to the internet, you're doing pretty good for yourself. We're living in some trying times. Anyways, I'm going to wrap the show up. This has been Morning Coffee with Kevin. I am your host, Kevin Peterson, and it has been a joy talking to you this morning. I'm going to go make another cup of coffee, and I will see you next week. Peace.